The opinions you hear on Your Mountain from individual hosts or guests do not necessarily represent those of Your Mountain, our sponsors, or other entities we're affiliated with professionally or otherwise. You've waited long enough. Go listen to the show.
There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is Your Mountain.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I'm your host, David Wilms. With me, as always, co-host Nephi Cole.
What a wonderful day, Dave. Wonderful.
It is. It's a wonderful day to be in Wyoming. I'll say that.
It is. It's post primary election day, and boy, what an interesting election it was.
It was a very interesting election. And for those who don't know, in Wyoming, the primary election is really the general election. Something like 80%. Because
there's no Democrats in the state.
Yeah, like 80% of all elections are decided during the primary, really. So there's the main competition.
Is it 80%? I bet it's more, because here's the thing. I bet it's more. Because you said 80%, but I think it's because you're trying to divide the state between Democrat and Republican. But the reality is, if you're a D in one of the counties in Wyoming, so let's say Jackson, and you're a Democrat, you probably ran unopposed, and you're a shoe-in there too.
Yeah, no, I think that it accounts for all of that. It is where they're uncontested races, or, you know, I think it's I can't remember exactly how they do it. It was like uncontested races or uncompetitive races, like the ones that, you know, just aren't going to be competitive. It's roughly 80%. So yesterday was our general election. We got a pretty good sense of who we're going to, like, what the legislature is going to look like, who our governor is going to be, all of our major elected officials.
Yeah,
pretty good sense of
that. A lot of old friends coming back to the legislature, both folks who have been there and for folks, and some folks that are returning. Eric Barlow making the move, of course, from the Senate over to the prohibitive favorite now, the Republican nomination for governor. He's a great guy, veterinarian out of the middle of the Powder River Basin.
And veteran.
Neat dude. Yeah.
Veterinarian and veteran, fourth generation rancher. Just salt of the earth, nicest guy you could ever meet. He's just,
I think he
cares.
I have a lot of confidence in his capacity to do a good job. We'll see how it all turns out, but I think that there's it's a great opportunity, great outlook.
Totally agree. And at least one of our old colleagues from our time with the prior governor, and a former guest on this podcast.
Yeah, shout out to Jessica Crowder.
Yeah, heck yeah, Jessica, way to go. Really proud of you.
Making us look really bad, you and I.
You and I, because our former co-host is a judge and our coworker is now in the legislature.
And we are hosting this podcast.
It is, yeah. There's a difference, I guess, huh?
Yeah. It's really very Al Bundy, isn't it? Like, we're just here, just hanging out, hosting the podcast. It's like, it has a very Saturday Night Live, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure feel to it.
Man, you just went to 3 different places. I was going to try and make a 4 touchdowns in a single game joke, and then you went on to Saturday Night Live and whatever the other one was. Now I already forgot.
I said Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. It's no, it wasn't Bill and Ted's. Who's the Wayne's World? That's what I'm thinking about. See, now I got a 4.
That's what now. Yeah, okay, there you go. Now you're in the right place. So we're doing that, and all of our colleagues are going on and doing really incredible things. But anyway, huge shout out to Jessica. Really proud of her. She's a sharp woman. It was really great to work with back in our time at the governor's office.
She is phenomenal.
She's going to do a
great job.
She's going to do a great job.
And the downside for our friends who are now judges and legislators is Dave and I can still say stupid things on the internet. And,
with very little consequence. Yeah, with very little consequence.
Yeah. Good luck with that, Judge McGrady.
Yeah, that's right. We have this freedom to say stupid things. And sometimes we use it, and we might use it today.
It's highly likely.
um, man, yeah, I'm a little bit. I want to transition into what we plan to talk about. Uh, our main. Let me just run through. Like our main topic is this. You may have seen a bunch of press around it if you are in the hunting community, conservation world. You might have seen emails already coming from the organizations you support about a proposal to rescind the 2001 Roadless Rule from the Forest Service. I want to talk about that in more detail, but let's first start with maybe because I think that one's going to be more controversial. Let's start with something that's perhaps a little less controversial, maybe like something that is a universally a good thing, a good news item, and that would be that I think it was last week. And I'll timestamp this. We're recording this late on August 19th, so we're sitting here on a Wednesday recording this. I think it was last week that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finalized their hunt fish rule, and we talked about this when it was in proposed form a number of months ago about this proposed hunt fish rule. This is something that every administration does every year. There's a new hunt fish rule that's proposed, and the hunt fish rule is really about on U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service lands. What are you, as a hunter or an angler, what are we allowed to hunt and fish on those lands? And every refuge, every shoreline, every coastline, all of these different Fish and Wildlife Service national seashores, all these Fish and Wildlife Service owned and managed lands have different purposes. They were established for different reasons, right? And some of them have hunting opportunities on them and some of them don't. And and we go through this thing every year where the Fish and Wildlife Service puts out their hunt fish rule and says, here are the places that you can hunt this fall that are under the jurisdiction of the Fish and Wildlife Service. So that's what just happened. And it was a huge expansion in the number of species and places that you could hunt and or fish. And I think it ultimately opens up something like 95% of all Fish and Wildlife Service managed lands to hunting or fishing of some kind. And it'll be argued as it's the largest expansion ever. And I think technically that's true. I do want to provide a little nuance. We talked about the nuance later. We'll provide a little nuance in a minute on what this actually does and means and how they come up with these numbers of millions of acres added, because there's some squishy math, but every single administration uses the exact same math. But anyway, I thought I'd start that off. I think it's a universally good thing to have these public lands that are open to more opportunities where they are compatible with the established purposes of the refuge. So what's your reaction to that announcement, Nephi?
Yeah, pretty cool. I think, like you said, it's something that administrations typically do. This administration, I think, went further than any other has in the past in terms of their commitment to it and their expansion. I think it sets up a great goalpost because now I want to see the next administration top it. And so, I guess everybody keeps adding on to it, and I think that's exciting to see that this continues to expand. It's great for sportsmen, and I think it's really good for all of us.
Yeah, I think it will be a really hard thing for the next administration to beat.
But you better try.
You got to try, but it's going to be really hard, because now more than 92 million acres, 95% of National Wildlife Refuge land system are available for hunting. 95%. So from an acreage standpoint, it's going to be tough to increase the acreage. But let me explain how they do the acreage. And I know we've talked about it before, but I want to do it again because it's all really kind of interesting. So let's say we're hunting the Nephi Cole Wildlife Refuge.
It's my backyard.
I'm assuming at some point there will be a wildlife refuge named after Nephi. So we'll go with the Nephi Cole Wildlife Refuge.
I really hope so. I think I've earned it.
And that refuge has ducks and it has geese and it has some whitetail and maybe some turkeys and even some squirrels and rabbits and possums if you like that sort of thing, I guess.
I do.
All right, you do. All right. That's a weird mix of wildlife. Anyway, it's got all of these species. And let's say it was established for black-footed ferret habitat. Like it was established to be a refuge for ferrets.
But there's all this other stuff on it.
But there's all this other stuff on it.
Because
so shortly
that's how
after
ecosystems work.
Yeah. So shortly after it's established, Fish and Wildlife Service does a hunt fish rule. And they say, this year on the Nephi Cole Wildlife Refuge, which is 1 million acres, it's huge. I assume if there's going to be something named after you, it's going to be big. So the 1 million acre, Nephi Cole Fish and Wildlife or National Wildlife Refuge. And that first year they open up the whole thing to duck hunting and goose hunting. Okay. So they've let's just say duck hunting. They didn't even do goose hunting the first year. So it's in their rule, they say 1 million acres of opportunity opened up, of hunting opportunity opened up. The next year, people send in comments and say, hey, there's some good duck hunting opportunity or goose hunting opportunities here too. You should open that up. And so in year 2, they look at it and say, you know what? You're right. We should open that up. And so in year 2, they still are allowing the duck hunting, but now they add goose hunting. So now they've added an additional 1 million acres of hunting opportunity for the public. You see where I'm going with this? Because the next year it's whitetail. And so now it's an additional
million acres.
So now it's 3 million acres of hunting opportunity. So do that and then replicate that on every wildlife refuge in the country. And that's how you get some of these big numbers. Anyway, like this rule says 1,488 new hunting and fishing opportunities across 32 states. That's just saying we've identified a lot more species in a lot more places that we're going to allow people to hunt and or fish. And so I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. But
for sure.
But there's always squishy math involved in this. But in this, it really is legitimately a lot of the acres.
I've decided I'd rather not have it named after me because the way I look at it, I don't know that I've done anything to really earn it. And so I think it would have to be like something like I'd have to die in some kind of, a crazy way to earn it. And I'm not ready for it.
I thought it would have been something. No, I thought it would have been something.
No, you can have it.
No, I don't want it. It's going to be you because this refuge is going to be like an old shooting range that you're like help decommission this shooting range and turn it into a wildlife refuge. But you'd still find a way to still allow recreational shooting on this wildlife refuge.
Of course we would. 80% of funding for Pittman Robertson dollars comes from non-hunting related sports shooting.
I set you up for that.
We got to let people know that because what happens if you get rid of that? Well, just might as well just flush PR down the toilet. And I'm not ready to do that because I like Pittman Robertson.
I'm a pretty big fan of it too. Everybody should be a pretty big fan of Pittman Robertson.
$1 billion a year.
Just over that is, when you add in DJ and everything, it's like 1.2 or 1.4 now. I can't
Somebody
remember the
fishes.
Yeah, I mean, I know if it doesn't have a primer on it, you're probably not going to do it. But maybe there's some fishing you can do with a primer.
I don't know. My son loves to fish. Actually, my son Griffin, I think you knew this. Sorry, names. But man, that kid, he loves to tie his own flies. He does his own fly rods now. Like he has a little group at school that they build fly rods. Man, kid loves to fish.
Man, did you learn that from the mailman?
He didn't get it from me, that's for sure. Schwann's man.
Schwann's man?
Joking. Yeah, his chicken cordon bleu is delicious, apparently.
It arrived every day around the same time.
It was perplexing, but always very strange.
Speaking of which, not going to say where. Oh, I can say where we were, but I'm not going to say it. But your wife's name was thrown around a few times in a meeting we were at last week, and not just by you.
Yeah, she's a pretty big deal. We're not gonna. I don't know if it's comfortable saying. I don't want.
No,
to
I'm not going to say anything what she does. I'm just saying a proud husband moment for you. She
Yeah.
got some really good shout outs last week.
She works in the. I don't know if you want to call it the wildlife conservation space, but she works in the. She's a really big deal. She's a big deal.
I mean, it was clear in that meeting that she was a bigger deal than you were.
Well, thanks a lot, Dave.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so you won't see her on a podcast embarrassing herself nationally.
Yeah,
No, we do not. But yeah, we were at the American Wildlife Conservation Partnership meeting, and it was an excellent meeting. It was at my museum, Dave. I hope you enjoyed it.
I didn't even get a chance to spend any time in it, except for the meeting. But it was an awesome. I mean, Buffalo Bill Cody Museum or Museum of the West.
Cody Firearms Museum. Yep. Yeah. I'm on the board for that museum. That's why.
Well, there's like 4 museums that are part of that complex, right?
Yeah.
So you're on the board of the firearms museum.
The best one, of course. Yeah. The largest private firearms collection in the world. And so if you've never been there, check it out, because we took a bunch of people to see Theodore Roosevelt's gun, to see all sorts of different guns. Like, where else can you walk through and see, like, literally one of my favorite things? I know this is a sidetrack, but we have a display right now that's for the 250th. It's the Arms of the Revolution. And my curator took some guys through with me so that we could talk through some of the different things that you can see. And they have literal firearms there from the Hessians and all sorts of folks that came over. And one of the things that is in the collection in the museum right now was some musket balls. And he talked about these musket balls that were in the collection, and they had come from the battlefield. The opening battle of the Revolutionary War, the skirmish, Lexington Concord. And so anyway, he was there, and he these are all behind glass, of course, nobody could touch them. But when he'd gone with the other curator to get these musket balls, some of them were flattened out, right, where they'd hit stuff. And he said, this is the most impactful moment for me as a curator and working in history, is when he'd gone to pick it up, from the other location, the individual there said, I want you to think about something. And he said, what? It says, the last time that a human hand touched this musket ball is when they loaded it into a rifle and fired it at the British.
Unless the British were doing this, holding their hands in front of their face, and it went right through their hand.
But pretty cool, right? Like, that's history.
That's really neat. That's really neat.
Yeah.
And it's a cool museum in a cool town, in a town that was filled with a lot of wildfire smoke, which is going to be my segue into our next topic.
Yeah.
I mean, we were choking on it. The smoke in the West this year has been a lot. And it comes up in a lot of conversations. Right? You hear it. You and I have been around this stuff forever. We hear about it all the time. People talk about the fires in the West and just how atrocious they've been, and they seem to be getting bigger and more frequent, and they attribute that to a whole host of things. And the funny part to me is always, you have people that they just have decided this is the reason. It's this thing is the reason why we have more fire, and they latch onto one thing.
Yeah, it's climate change.
Yeah, well, you have some that are like, it's climate change. That's why we have more fire. Or we're not logging enough. That's why you have more fire. Not grazing enough. That's why we have more fire. Then there's
and many things can be true at once, and some not at all.
I mean, yeah, all of them can be true in some way. Like, everything can contribute in some way. The point is there's not one thing that you can say, with one exception. I'm going to make one exception to that rule, which is, in some places, and I think in the Great Basin in Nevada is a great example, and I think parts of Idaho and even Utah are really, and Eastern Oregon and Washington, in some of those sagebrush areas, you can pretty easily say the reason why we have increased fire frequency and intensity there is because of cheatgrass, invasive species.
Yeah.
Like, that is the driving force.
Yeah.
Now there might be some other contributors of, like, ancillary contributors. But if you got rid of cheatgrass, the fire regime would look a whole lot different in some of those places.
The frequency would go way down, the intensity would change.
Yeah.
Which is a common thing throughout the West in other ecosystems as well, and other fire regime, areas. There's going to be discussion from intelligent individuals who are far smarter than us, who have a much better understanding of those different forest ecologies and communities about what our management decisions are doing to the forests. So one of the things that, one of my favorite professors, years ago, always said, was when we talk about wilderness, and we talk about Yellowstone, and we talk about people with a hands-off approach. He said, like, no matter what you think, whatever decision we make on management is always still a decision, and those decisions have impacts. And so it's kind of foolish for us to think that there's like a right or a wrong. Nature doesn't care about a right or a wrong. This is not something where there's a morality to it. It's just the decision. And so you decide with these different management regimes and how you control fire or how you don't, and what you cut or what you don't. You're making decisions about what a landscape is going to look like and what it's going to look like in 10 years. And then because of that, what it's going to look like in 20 years. And these are all choices that we make based on management.
That's right. And one of the choices that we made as a country about 26 years ago was we looked at, okay, so we have all these designations of land. Let's focus on the Forest Service for a second, on Forest Service lands. We have all of these national forests across the country, totaling tens of millions of acres. And within that national forest, we have management priorities, right? We have Multiple Use Sustainable Yield Act. We have the National Forest Management Act. We have things that Congress has passed that says, here's how you should manage forests. And they're managed for a lot of different things. They're managed for timber production. They're managed for food production through, grazing allotments. They're managed for wildlife and recreation. They're managed for wilderness characteristics. They're managed for watershed health and production. There's all of these different management pieces that fold into what we would call like a multi-use landscape. And I argue frequently, multiple use doesn't mean all uses everywhere. It means there's a lot of uses. And in some places there might be 10 things that are compatible with a certain part of the landscape, and in other places it might be 2, and you have this menu and you figure out how to best apply it. And we do things like Congress will come in and say, this area we want to designate as a wilderness area where there's no motorized or mechanized use, and we want to set this area aside. And in some areas we might say, this is a high timber, productive use area, and we might have a lot of timber sales. There are a lot of ways to manage the forest. Well, in 2001, we had the Clinton administration.
That's right. The end of the Clinton administration.
End of the Clinton administration. Signed this rule called the Roadless Rule, but it was the 2001 Roadless Rule that set aside, that inventoried all of the roadless areas in the National Forest System, areas that didn't have roads. And there's so much nuance to this, and I'm not an expert in the area, so I'm going to stay a little bit high level. But it's, you're right. You do draw these polygons. They typically don't have roads running through them. Although I should be clear, just because it was a roadless area doesn't mean there's not a road there. There are some identified roadless areas that actually have roads there. So that's a little bit of a misnomer to say that there are no roads, but generally speaking, it's an area that don't have Forest Service maintained roads in them. And so they were inventoried, and this rule was adopted saying, we want to keep them in this status, right? We want to keep them generally roadless with some limited exceptions. And that, it was a pretty significant land total. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions of acres of the forest system that was identified as, what was it, 58.5 million acres of inventoried roadless areas. And that rule generally prohibited the construction of roads and road reconstruction and timber harvesting in that area with limited exceptions. And as you might guess, something like that addresses an area that's that many acres over something like 10 states is going to create controversy. And it did. And it was litigated for years. It was litigated before finally a court established that, yes, there was authority. The president had the authority to issue this rule. And it was in place with a couple of exceptions. Idaho and Colorado petitioned to have their own specific roadless rule to apply to their states. So they negotiated a roadless rule that was different than this 2001 rule to apply to their states. So they have this rule, their own rules. So fast forward to about a year ago, we talked.
Before you fast forward, I think it's important to note that the Roadless Rule, what it didn't do. And so there's some discussion about, the Roadless Rule did not close any roads. It prevented new buildings, stopped the creation of new roads, left existing roads open primarily. It didn't target decommissioning legally. It didn't block legally established roads. It did place some logging limitations on timber cutting with some exceptions. And so it's important to note those things as we move forward because there are other, during this time period, there have been efforts, right, to decommission roads where forests have gone in and said, we don't need this road anymore. They've removed it. They've cut down on, they've changed travel plans. That's not necessarily because of the Roadless Rule, and that needs to be said.
Good point. Really good point. That's right. In fact, some very specific roads that I know about that were decommissioned in the early 2000s were not in inventoried roadless areas. They were decommissioned for other reasons. They were viewed as causing some resource damage, some sedimentation in streams, causing some issues, and they were decommissioned. And I think we've talked about it before, but I had actually fought the closing of a number of those roads because it was in areas that I like to hunt, and I felt like it was going to make access a lot harder, particularly for the older generation. Fast forward 20 years, it actually turns out that decommissioning those roads has made hunting in that area for me so much better. Like it's actually really improved it. So there will be comments somewhere in the record out there of me opposing closing of some of these roads, and in hindsight, I'd look back and say, maybe they were onto something on those particular ones, but it wasn't in an inventoried roadless area. So not all decommission. Yeah, I thought your point is spot on in what we're saying. So fast forward to now, or to a year ago, I guess, and the Forest Service put out a request. It was sort of a scoping. They put out a request for comments for information as they were contemplating whether or not to repeal that 2001 rule. And in that process, they received something like 200 and almost 250,000 comments from people.
I think it was one of the largest commented to date, like in terms of comment. Like I've got it someplace, but it was one of the largest in terms of public feedback, one of the largest feedback efforts they'd ever received for a proposed rule.
And most of the comments were in opposition to repealing the rule. Not all, definitely not all. There were plenty that supported it, but it stirred up a lot of passion from folks that don't repeal this rule, right? So they took that information and fast forward to now, and as of today, we're probably recording this one day too early, frankly, but our schedules just didn't line up, and this is the only time that we could really make it work. So there's a notice in what's called the reading room for the Federal Register today, where they kind of outline, they being the Forest Service, outlines what they're intending to do. But the draft environmental impact statement and the full analysis won't be published until tomorrow. So we haven't seen everything. But what we do know is that the proposal, there will be a range of alternatives There will be at least there'll be 3 alternatives, or there's a preferred alternative, and then I believe 3 additional alternatives is what it looks like. And the preferred alternative identified by the Forest Service as this is what we would like to do is to repeal in its entirety the 2001 Roadless Rule. But everywhere except obviously Colorado and Idaho, because they have separate roadless rules. They don't operate under that 2001 rule. So every place else, it would repeal that roadless rule. And it will be, this will be open for public comment through, I think it's September 21st is when the comment period will close at 11:59 p.m. You can go to federalregister.gov and search it up. You can just type in the search bar roadless rule. It'll pull it up. And there's an easy way portal there you can click on to submit your own comments. Public should submit comments. We'll talk a little bit about the detail, but I got to get into the legal wonkiness thing here. It's important. You're going to get emails from, if you're on any mailing list for any conservation organizations, you're going to get an email about this. And you're probably going to get one that says, sign this action alert, sign this, fill your name in, and it'll get sent in as a comment to oppose the rescission of the roadless rule. Okay. And you can do that if you support opposing the rescission of the roadless rule. And you can do that. But I'm going to tell you something here. Nephi knows this. You know this. But I'm going to tell you all something. Some of you may know, some of you may not.
So how worthless your comment is if you just pile on and submit the exact same comment as everybody else by using the copy paste button.
If you do that,
then
there will be
somebody like me or Dave sitting in an office somewhere will run a query using AI, and they'll find all the ones that are exactly the same, and they'll read them exactly once. And they'll say, yeah. And then they'll treat it like a comment, not like 1,000 comments.
They are batched together and they are one comment. They're required to respond to every comment, especially if you have substance to it. So they'd be required to respond to that one comment.
Yeah, but they'll respond to it by, they're going to say we had 8,000 of the exact same comment. Here's the response. It's one response to the comment that you all made that was exactly the same.
That's right.
And so you just get the same response.
Yeah. So if you're going to send something in, take a little bit of time and send something unique. Send a unique comment rather than a form comment. A lot of those comments generators, like the organization sending all that stuff out, like what they want to use that for is to be able, it's a PR thing partially, right? They want to say X number of people oppose this, and that's fine. That's well and good. That's fine. But as far as on the substance, on the merits, on the agency responsiveness to the comment, be as specific as you can, be as unique as you can, provide your own comment rather than a form letter. But if you can't, if all you got the time for is the form letter, send it. But if you have a little bit of time to personalize something, personalize it.
Yeah. And I'm going to say don't send it if you don't have time to do something personal. Here's why I'm going to say that. It's my personal opinion, but here's my opinion. There's some arguments that are made about this rule, and they don't apply the same everywhere. And so that's one of the things that, like, this is this issue, this is another one of those big ticket issues where if we take it and you just take it at face value, you're going to have both sides be able to argue something for why this is a good idea or a bad idea. I guarantee you that the reasons that the governor of Montana says that he wants to be able that this rule needs to go away, like, he's going to make a good argument. And so are you going to be arguing about that, or are you going to be arguing about the Tongass? Because these are different things. And you're looking at how we deal with preserving American rainforests in Alaska. That's a totally different world than trying to figure out how you manage overgrown forests right outside of Denver. These are different things. And if your comment pretends that they're the same, you've just degraded the quality of your content. You've just made it more difficult for your argument to gain traction. And you see this all the time where people take an argument and there's some really good, cogent things to argue. And then, then they give up on it and they just go to the top of the mountain with something. And you're way better off to look at those little specific things that are valuable and need to be addressed and to talk through those things, because you're going to find that both sides of this are going to have arguments that hold some water. And so what do you want to do? Are you going to go all in on getting nothing? Or are you going to try and parse out, okay, where's the argument here that I think needs to be made about the specifics of this? My personal opinion, if you really understand what rescission of the roadless rule does, because you've taken the time, that's different than writing. If Dave comes to me, if I come to you and say, if I were to say like, oh yeah, I want you to pick one side of this argument, and I give you one paragraph with just the meat and potatoes argument for my side of the argument, and that's all anybody gets, you may lose the argument. You may lose the argument because you're not making anybody talk to, or, you're not addressing the little issues that the opposite side is going to have that are valid. So I just tell you, I think if you want to comment on it, learn enough about it to have a strong argument about the nuance. That's what I think.
I mean, you're not wrong at all. And at the same time, like, if you feel passionate about something, frankly, there's,
if you feel passionate about something, know about it. Know about it, Dave. Know about it.
But the form letter, it's going to be treated as one comment. It's going to be responded. You just know that going in. That's what it's going to be.
And if you feel passionate enough to throw your work away, then do that. But if you feel passionate enough to say, like, I actually want to be considered, then know that if you actually want to be considered, you've got to have a deeper conversation. You can't be like, oh, this is so important to me that I whacked return, that I pressed my mouse button. That's how important it was. It was important enough for me to get active on my mouse button. That'll get you'll get numbers.
Yeah.
But you won't get results.
Right. If one of the results you want is to slow down a process, the more unique comments that come in, the longer it takes to respond to them. I'm just saying. There are only so many people in the Forest Service, and actually there's a lot fewer of them this year than there were last year, to be able to respond to this and be able to follow the legal requirements in this notice comment period. But let me really quickly, and we don't have a ton of time. I'm sorry, this is going to be a shorter episode. But really quickly, just do a quick rundown of some of the when you said know the details of the different places and so forth. Let me just run down a couple of the arguments from both sides on this, right? Just so it's out there. So one of the reasons that the administration is proposing to do this is they say, and you'll hear this response from a number of Western governors too, supporting this interpretation, which is these forests impact people in the communities around them disproportionately more than they impact people from other parts of the country. And so these local communities and stakeholders should have a strong say in what happens in those places. And that by getting rid of a blanket rule that applies the same everywhere, and then requiring or leaving determinations on what to do with those roadless areas to the local planning, like the regional offices, for example, of the Forest Service, you will get better outcomes for the people on the ground. That's the biggest overarching argument. And then there are other arguments under that of we need to be able to respond to fire. We need to be able to respond to, we need to be able to increase timber production. We need to deal with issues at the urban-rural interface, where you have the likelihood of far more catastrophic structure fires and we need to have some flexibility to do things there. And then there's the recreation piece, and it's sort of interesting reading through the proposal that it's saying, yeah, we actually want to see more roads in these places, and we think at some point there will be a road-based recreation economy that'll benefit local communities there. And yes, there's an acknowledgement of, yes, having more people tends to equal more fire, but we also need to address, disease and and density and other things that are contributing to increased fire. And so those are some of the arguments on that side, right? And I'm not going to say that those are invalid. I think you'd find
because
people
they're valid.
Because there's some validity to them. You're going to find some people that say, yeah, we need to have some more flexibility near communities to be able to deal with this stuff. And so the flip side of it is you have some folks saying, look, a lot of this stuff doesn't have high timber value anyway. Why would we force something out of a place that doesn't have great value to begin with? But then there's also, and this one resonates with me a little bit, of there's a lot of data that says things like species like elk are really sensitive to road density, and that the more roads you have, the farther away from you they will be. And so if you want to decrease opportunity for hunters on public lands, build more roads, because it'll just push elk out of those public lands and onto private lands or someplace where they can have refuge. I think, and then there's arguments about watershed health and your riparian areas and watershed health and the benefits of having for cold water fisheries of having roadless areas. I think those are all valid arguments,
also valid
as well, right? Which is why as I sit here, I think Idaho and Colorado may have been onto something.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Idaho and Colorado did exactly what this argument is saying that some of the other governors are arguing. They're arguing about the knowledge problem, right? The knowledge problem that says that the people who probably know the most about a problem in a given forest, they're the people who are on the ground living with and working with that forest. And if you empower those people in the decision-making process more, then you're going to get better outcomes. Now, here's one of the problems with the argument, the blanket undoing, right? Is because in many cases, we've had those local discussions. And so that makes this really unique. It makes it a really challenging thing, because if you just blanket say like, hey, this rule that was in place since 2001, we're going to get rid of it, right? Well, you have a lot of plans where this is built in, this is baked in. This is something that has been part of the management thought process and regime. So when you look at other roads, when you look at connectors, when you look at how they have identified where a roadless area is and how they work around that with trail systems and things like that, that's actually baked into this process. And that's one of the real challenges about rolling it back in its entirety. It's why I'm anxious, and I don't know enough, but it's why I'm interested in seeing the alternatives and seeing what the different proposals are for how you deal with this. Because once again, we're in this situation where, it's hard for me to say if it was too much or too little at the beginning, other than I love that Idaho and Colorado gave themselves the flexibility to be able to work through it. And so now if we just go backwards and we get rid of it, well, then what do you do when you have 25 years of people figuring out how to make it work now? It's not simple. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to it, but it is definitely not simple.
I'm going to go this far. I'm going to say, I think this approach of a full rescission is a missed opportunity. And by that, I mean, I think you'd find some very rational actors out there that work in the hunting community, the conservation community, that would say, look, that rule was in 2001. We've got 25 years of experience operating under it. There are things that we can probably learn from and do better. And maybe there's an opportunity to sit down around the table. Is like the reason I say it's a missed opportunity is some of these land management things are so divisive that when you actually have an opportunity to bring people together and come up with a solution that can move the ball forward and actually nobody's going to be 100% happy, but everybody's going to be a little bit happier than they were when this started, rather than completely alienating some people to give a victory to a total victory to some people. Like, I think it's a missed opportunity to move past some of the divisiveness that we've got going on and actually do something really positive for land health and conservation. And the last thing I'd point out is, like, and I just have to throw the number out there, right? There are over 250,000 miles of roads that exist in the National Forest System right now. 250,000, and the Forest Service does not have, there's a $10 billion maintenance backlog to be able to do upkeep on the infrastructure they already have. So talking about, trying to push more road building and generation when you can't maintain what you've got, and what you've got is 250,000 miles. I think there's a conversation that is necessary around that too before you throw out all of the bathwater and the baby in there with it. So again, that's just my point. Is I do believe that both sides of this argument, there are some meritorious pieces in it, which is why it's kind of frustrating to see that the route that's being chosen is the most aggressive route, rather than recognizing, hey, there's an opportunity here to like maybe even bring some people together and make this better for lots of folks.
Yeah. I don't think that I'm not advocating for the aggressive route, but I'm going to say it's we are where we are because of a history too. And I would say that I don't think it's a positive thing. And the reason I'm going to say it's not a positive thing is, like, we are in the situation where people have decided in the past, there have been decisions made, and it's not just on this, it's on lots of policy positions where the no compromise has been what we've, that's been the look at ESA, look at all sorts of different things where they've said, like, no, we're not going to talk to you about it. Well, you have an administration now that's aggressive enough that they've just said, okay, well, that's the way you're going to be. All right, we're going to give you 100% then. You don't want to talk. And I think that we need to remember, and I would say this is something for us to try and get out of the cycle of, no, I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to start from a position of no compromise, because if we're always there, then, sometimes we end up in a place like this.
Yeah. This is my final thought on it. To build off what you said, there are eras of conservation in the history of North America, and conservation biologists have kind of laid this out chronologically in like 5 different eras. And it started with the era of abundance, era of exploitation when we were killing everything, era of protection when we're like, oops, we should stop killing everything, era of game management, right? And then the era of environmental management, which is really what we had been in. And I'm a part of me is like, we're maybe entering this mini era of the era of haymakers, right? It's just this era.
Like that, the haymaker,
right? The haymaker era.
Just like everybody's about to fall over on the mat, so they're just, every time they can, they just load up one giant punch and throw it.
That's what it feels like right now. And so I totally understand why the administration is doing this in response to actions that have happened before, right? It's the equal and opposite reaction effect. But I do think it perpetuates the haymaker era. And at some point we need, people to come into the room and say, calmer minds prevail, and says, we got to stop throwing haymakers. We got to sit down and work this out.
Pragmatism,
the area, maybe that can be the next era that we work towards.
Yeah. And just to recap our entire episode, congratulations, Eric Barlow. Looking forward to you. In the halls of Wyoming's capital.
Yeah, I'll second that. I got nothing else except that I really have to run. Do you have anything else?
I got it, Dave. Go get your stuff done.
Sweet.
Old
All
man.
Right. Well, I got a kid going to college, and we got a lot of things to get done, which makes me feel real old. But anyway, appreciate everybody listening. I know it's been a month or more since we've done one of these, so appreciate you sticking around and checking this one out. Reminder, if you want to get a hold of us, our new email address, don't even have the old one anymore. It's just sending it there. It's just a black box. New email address, yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. That's yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. Do not send it to the old one because we are done with that. It's gone. I can't even access it anymore. And find us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. We've actually posted like twice in 2 weeks on those channels. So we're really engaged on social media now. Anyway, reach out, find us there at the handles @itsyourmountain. Give us that 5-star review. Do all the things that we're asking and begging and pleading for. It really, really helps keep us going. And as always, remember that life is about experiences. So go have one.